celebrate. They have done it.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. It's Chris back with a quick video really all about addressing speculation about one of our players who could be leaving in the summer if you believe transfer guru Fabrizio Romano. I'll get into that in a second. But who's the player that we're talking about? Of course, we're talking about our young midfield starlet, Lewis Miley, depending on how you pronounce it. I don't really care. I know what you're talking about. The kid is class. I'm going to get into my thoughts on Louis Miley in a second. You know exactly how I feel about him if you watched the channel before. But according to Romano, a number of clubs in the Premiership and in the Bundesliga are keeping an eye on Lewis Miley's situation in the summer because of his lack of game time at Newcastle, obviously potentially looking to make a move. Now, he doesn't say whether it's a permanent move or a loan move. I've heard some people talk about this for Lewis Miley. Obviously, I did the video not too long ago about John Anderson saying that Lewis Miley needs to go out on loan to get, you know, a bit more game experience, or he expects more from Lewis Miley, you know, and the selling them permanently is just nuts for me. That's absolutely mental. That is an absolute non-starter. You know, we already got rid of Elliot Anderson. Look how well he's doing for Nottingham Forest. You know, he could end up with Champions League football himself, you know, at the end of the season here. And Anderson's been brilliant since he's gone to Nottingham Forest. He was starting to come into a game at us, and then we sold him, moved him on, and we've still got players like Sean Longstaff and even Joe Willick at the club, which I'll get into in a minute. But when it comes to Lewis Miley, so what Romano is saying here is obviously other clubs have noticed how good this kid is, and they're thinking this kid could maybe be, you know, the next Jude Bellingham, the next Phil Foden type player, right? And rightly so. You got to remember here, before you start talking about nonsensical stuff like lack of pace, which I've already seen. I've addressed this before, and it drives me mad. It really does. I've had enough of it. It's just looking at the world through the prism of FIFA. It's not realistic. It's not sensible. Some of the best players that ever played the game had no pace, but pace of mind, and that's what Lewis Miley's got. We'll get into that in a bit more detail, yeah. But think about some of the records that Lewis Miley's had for Newcastle United. He's the youngest ever player to start a Champions League game, ahead of Phil Foden, ahead of Jude Bellingham. He's the youngest player, I think, to get an assist in the Champions League since Theo Walcott, the youngest English player, that is, since Theo Walcott for Arsenal back in the day as well. You know, he scored vital goals for Newcastle as well. You know, I think I did this in the last video. He's got something like, you know, 4 goals in you know, whatever, 40 appearances or something like that. You know, his goal record is actually up there with the likes of Joe Willick, who's supposed to be a goal-scoring midfielder. We don't even know what Lewis Miley is yet. We've seen him play in the 6, we've seen him play in the 8, and he's done both roles really well. But just because he's come on recently and not set the world on fire, you know, it's leading to ex-players and pundits like John Anderson questioning the lad's ability, maybe questioning whether he needs to go out on loan to learn his trade. And then people like Romano, obviously, either he's stirring the pot or he's heard some stuff, you know, either or, maybe a little bit of both, possibly. But for me, this is a complete and utter nonsensical story and a non-starter. Lewis Miley is the future of this football club. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. What we've seen this kid do at 17 and 18 years old against Paris Saint-Germain, AC Milan, Chelsea, Manchester United, Arsenal, the biggest clubs around, City. He's played in games against these and he has not looked lost at all. He's actually looked more comfortable at the top level at 17, 18 than even Jude Bellingham did at that age as well. So why on earth would we sell probably one of the hottest prospects in Europe, certainly one of the hottest prospects we've had as a club for the last 30 years probably, you know, to a rival Premier League club for starters, which would be nuts. You know, and even across to the Bundesliga to watch them develop him into being a future England captain. I just don't think that's going to happen. That's not what Newcastle United are right now. We're not that club anymore. We don't get rid of great players, young players like we used to do back in the day with the likes of Gaza and Waddle and players like that. We don't do that anymore. We're supposed to be growing for the future. That's why we sign the best young players. We take club players from other clubs' academies like Manchester City, with the shape of Alfie Harrison. We've took players from Arsenal. We're not going to get rid of our jewel in the crown of our youth academy in the last few years and Lewis Miley to another Premier League club. That is just absolutely nuts in my mind. And if the club are think they're doing that, I think they're crazy, especially if they're going to keep a player like Sean Longstaff or even Joe Willick, who I think has regressed quicker than my hairline, as I've said on numerous times before. But the biggest reason I don't think we'll get rid of Lewis Miley, and this is all just smoke and with no mirrors effectively and no substance whatsoever, is if we get into the Champions League, which we're looking very good for at the minute. Obviously, I'm recording this pre-Villa, but we are looking good for getting in the Champions League. We're going to have, you know, way more games next season. If you think about the Premier League, European football, even if it is the Champions League or not the Champions League, European football, domestic cups, there's going to be 50 or 60 games to be played next season. Lewis Miley is going to get more game time, whether that be in squad rotation in the Premier League or in those cup games. He's going to play more minutes. And we've seen when Lewis Miley is appeared this season. Great goals against Bromley, against Forest as well. He's come on to games, he's used the ball really well. There's only been the last kind of 2 or 3 matches where he's maybe struggled to pick up the pace of the game, But that whole thing for me, the lack of pace as a player, is just a complete ridiculous argument. It's a lazy argument, and it's people who have no understanding of football. You've only got to look at Kevin De Bruyne, who's got no pace, one of the best midfielders we've ever seen in the Premier League. And he hasn't had any pace for years, and it's not doing him any harm at all, as it really didn't do Xavi or Iniesta any harm. Didn't do Michael Carrick or Xavi Alonso any harm. So why would it do Lewis Miley any harm? I think he's very much of the same vein as a player, in terms of using that vision of mine. You've only got to listen to the captain, Bruno Guimaraes, when he scored his first goal, Lewis Miley, against Fulham. Bruno Guimaraes said that when he was 18, he was shit. And he said that this lad is absolutely unbelievable. And if that's not enough for you, listen to what Eddie Howe said about this player. So he said about Lewis Miley, he said he can be anything. He really could solidify that position and be outstanding for us for a number of years. He's going to need a bit of luck to do that. Every player needs to stay fit, injury-free. That's why we need to look after him. So Eddie's looking after him. The club are looking after Lewis Miley. He's just come back from a really bad injury. He did his metatarsal, I think, when he was away with England. He'd done his back. The kid's had a lot of football at a young age, and he's still growing into his body. I think because of that, he picked up niggles and knocks, and that's because of our lack of squad depth. But if you go into the summer, Sean Longstaff, I think, is gone from the football club. Wish Sean well. I'm not going to be nasty about Sean. I've always said I think Sean as a lad is a lovely lad. He's a great role model for the young players coming through, showing what you can do when you just knuckle down and graft. And he's got over 200 appearances for the club. So for me, I think Sean goes with well wishes, but he's not going to get in this team. I think Lewis Miley's miles ahead of Sean Longstaff right now, and that's why Sean Longstaff is probably going to leave. So then we will need Lewis Miley for the coming season, certainly for European football. He's homegrown as well. All those quotas that need to be met. Joe Willick as well. Joe Willick has not been the same Joe Willick as he has been 2 or 3 years ago. Injuries have taken toll on Joe Willick. He comes onto the pitch, and for some weird reason, there's blinkers for Joe Willick. Everybody's so obsessed with the Joe Willick of 3 years ago. They don't see him rushing passes, making bad decisions, miscontrolling things, rushing the play and giving the ball away. If anything, Joe Willick's more sloppy on the ball than Lewis Miley is. But Lewis Miley gets all the jip. I don't know why, because people seem to think that he's going to come on and spin the game on his head, because he's the next Gavi or something like that. You know what I mean? I don't get it. Joe Willick seems to get a free pass. A lovely bloke, great player in the past for us, but that's the past. Lewis Miley's the future. So I don't think there's any truth in this at all, really. Yes, there will be truth in terms of clubs looking at Lewis Miley. Why not? He's an excellent young player. With the ceiling is ridiculously high for Lewis Miley. It really is. You need bloody rope and climbing gear. You need Sylvester Stallone and cliffhanger to get to the ceiling that Lewis Miley's got as a player. But we're not going to sell that lad. We'll be stupid too. And Eddie Howe's not stupid. The club isn't stupid. No matter what my criticism has been of the lack of signings under Mitchell, Mitchell's not stupid. Mitchell scours the earth for young players like Lewis Miley. There's one here already. He is not going to let that kid leave this football club. No way. All this PSR nonsense that we all talk about, we're not going to sell a player like that who's possibly going to be a future England starter, even maybe a future England captain, Newcastle captain maybe in years to come. He's brilliant already at 17 and 18. He's only going to get better. We would be nuts to sell this player, absolutely nuts. I think that's another reason why maybe they let Elliot Anderson go, because they knew Lewis Miley was coming through. And that was the reason to let Anderson go. I still don't get why we kept Longstaff and let Anderson go. I'll never understand that. I'd love to ask Eddie Howe that question one day, but I probably won't get the chance to. But for me, Lewis Miley got to stay at the football club. This is a non-starter. Hopefully, this is all just going to be brushed away by the club. The club will come out and say how good Louis is and what he means for the future, and we'll get rid of all of that noise. And that's what I'm hoping to see from the football club. But let us know in the comments below what you guys think. Would you sell Lewis Miley? And if so, why would you? I don't understand why you would sell him. If it's the lack of pace thing, you need to go back and watch the kid playing. You need to go back and watch the players I've just listed to you there. De Bruyne, Alonso, Michael Ballack was the perfect example. No pace. Great player back in the day. Even Michael Carrick. All these players didn't have loads of pace, but they had the pace of mind and they were excellent footballers. And that's what I see Lewis Miley turning into. But if you're going to sell him, let me know the reasons why. We always like to debate in the comments. We don't sneer at you or have a go at you if having a difference of opinion. We'll keep it all above the belt. As always, no need to be abusive to anybody. Like and subscribe. Help the channel grow, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll be back with some more Newcastle Banter soon. See you later.
heroes celebrate. They have done it.